Good evening and welcome to Mystic Matters. I'm Kristen from the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. So glad that you could join us this evening. Suzette is off somewhere wonderful, warm, and tropical, so we wish her well. And we're enjoying some pretty good weather here, actually, for the fall. We're really enjoying our, what do you call that? Indian summer, yes. So just a few events that are going on for the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. This week we have the Business Before Hours, 8 a.m. on Thursday, and that's at Blue Hydrangea, one of my favorite gift shops. It's in Old Mystic, the original Old Mystic. And Rhonda is our friend, so we're looking forward to that. And then the November 8th Business After Hours is at Spicer Mansion, which I know everybody wants to have some champagne at Spicer Mansion, and they're actually going to be on the show next week. So we'll hope to see you there, and just register on the website. I'm really excited for today's episode of Mystic Matters because our neighbor, Mystic Medical Associates at 12 Roosevelt Avenue, just moved in a couple months ago, and we've been watching them get ready, build out their space. And so I'd like to introduce Chris Anderson. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, great.
Thank you very much.
So we had a ribbon cutting at Mystic Medical Associates, and Chris Anderson is
Yes, we did.
So when was that?
Oh, please. When was it? It was about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago. Might have been 3 weeks ago.
His whole family was there. It was wonderful. What a very supportive family, and colleagues were there.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you got started in your own practice.
Oh, boy. So it's really been sort of a long road. You know, I was a registered nurse for many years, about 9 years, and during that process, I stayed in school. I sort of always liked helping people, taking care of people, solving problems, and quite honestly, I just sort of, people say you fall into things. I didn't really fall into it because I worked very hard to get where I'm at. But it was just the natural progression of, I guess, what you would call my profession. You know, which as a registered nurse, we're fortunate to be able to have advanced degrees where we could go on and do exactly what I'm doing, which is basically practicing medicine. Mm-hmm.
So your abbreviations at the end, so medical always has an abbreviation. So
Yes.
FNP is Family Nurse Practitioner.
Family Nurse Practitioner.
And then -BC, what is
Board
that?
certified.
Not before Christ, or?
No. So board certified means that you've taken an examination. In my situation, it's the AANP board certification. So that means you're board certified to do whatever it is that you've gone to school for. Mm-hmm. So, family practice is what I chose to do. Now, initially, I was thinking about doing something else, like anesthesia initially, but I wasn't passionate about it, so I decided not to go that route. You know, I worked in an intensive care unit for about 3 years. And that was actually my track, was to do anesthesia. But you know, I wasn't very passionate about it, so I decided to try something else. And I'm very thankful that I did.
Do you, do people, like when they're little, are you like, well, I want to be an anesthesiologist? Or is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it was never, I never really knew what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. You know, I had gone to community college. I took a year off after high school. And I'd gotten a good job working in a steel mill in Wallingford. And then I did that for like 9 months. And I said, you know what, there's just got to be more for me.
Wow, is that still a story? Like, I got a good job working in a steel mill. That seems like such a older story.
No, I was getting paid like, you know, a good hourly rate at 19 years old.
That's amazing.
And I did that for a little while. It was like 9 months. And I felt like I needed more. So I went to community college. It was fairly cheap at the time to go to community college. And I did that for 2 years. I did some graphic design. I did some art classes. And I thought I was going to become like a teacher. So then I went to Southern Connecticut for 1 year. I realized that the education, I just wasn't really passionate about it. And I was at sort of a crossroads. I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do? I'm 22 years old. You know, I have to do something, and I got to make an earning, a decent earning doing it. So student loans, things like that. So I saw an ad in the paper. It said, become a registered nurse, pick your own shifts, huge sign-on bonuses. And I said, oh, RN, registered nurse, that sounds like a good idea. So I looked into some programs, and I got into a program in Bridgeport, Connecticut, St. Vincent's College, and I did that, and I became an RN, and I loved it.
So something finally clicked for you.
Yeah, just, I was nervous about it at the time because I was one of like 3 men in a class of 100 people. In my graduating class, there was only 2 guys who graduated. And, I started working, though, and I just instantly just got immersed into it. The science, the multidisciplinary team, like, meeting all the physicians, meeting all of, just everything that went into it. I was never bored, and I get bored very easily. So this was finally like,
Do you? That's
perfect.
funny.
Yeah.
Like knowing you, you're always so active. Whenever I go to see you at your office, there's always something going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very active person. I always want to solve things. I'm very intrigued by new things and solving problems, I guess. And medicine is really the perfect field for me because there's always new evidence, there's always new research, new medications, new patients. So I don't get bored.
Right.
And if I do get bored, I do something like open up my own practice.
Yeah. So
Which is why I'm here,
So then you decided, I'm going to go out on my own.
Yeah, it was. It's really been an interesting sort of process for me because I was working with a bigger group, and there's a lot of benefits to that, But for me to get the results that I wanted to see with my own, the way that I was delivering care, I felt like I had to be in control of everything. And that may be a problem, that may actually be something I should evaluate. Like maybe I think I have too much control, but
So you're examining yourself right now?
I have to. I have to always like self-reflect, to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. You have to do this reflective process where you look at, what you're doing and why you're doing it. And the reason why I've decided to open my own practice is really so I can look at all of the pieces and realize what can we get rid of? How can we make it more efficient to deliver care between me, the provider, and you, the patient? Because a lot of the problems I found in years was there's a lot of confusion in medicine. People call, they never get a call back. There's a lot of people involved in the care, so there's a lot of miscommunication. And I wanted to bring that sort of personalized approach back to primary care. Provider and patient, just like a strong relationship.
That's wonderful.
That's really what I'm trying to deliver.
So have you brought patients from your other practice, from when you were working in a big group?
So the way that works is I didn't bring anybody with me. People found out that I was going to leave, and then they made the conscious decision of whether or not they wanted to follow me to my new practice, or they could stay where I was and they could see other providers there. So that continues to be sort of a daily struggle where people will call and say, hey, I need to see Chris, and they have to sort of find me. They have to look me up. Because my practice now that I own is solely owned by me, and I'm not affiliated with the previous practice. So that's
if you're looking for him, he's at 12 Roosevelt Avenue,
yes,
above People's Bank on the 2nd floor. That's where he is. And
in the Packer building.
In the Packer building,
which is a wonderful building.
It's like a little community, isn't it?
It is. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I'm like a geek for history. Like I love historical, architectural things. And when I first saw that building, I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. This old industrial building. And then it was like its own community. You have a dentist, an eye doctor, psychology, a bank. I mean, there's so much in there.
Yeah, and if you're a person that, like you said, you get bored easily, then you can just walk out the door and be like, okay,
Yeah.
let me go see what's going on down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the people who actually work in those businesses come upstairs and see me, and they haven't had physicals in 3 years. Like, oh, well, I need a physical exam. I'm like, yeah, you do. You pay for insurance,
Right.
And we all pay for insurance, but we never get the physical. So it's the one thing that most insurance companies will pay for is the physical exam. Preventative services. So or preventive services, however you want to say that.
So you can do all that stuff. So anybody can come to you as a primary care,
Yes.
and they can get their yearly checkup.
Yep.
And what else can they get as?
So annual physical exams, sick visits, chronic diseases like high blood pressure, asthma, diabetes, pretty much anything.
And you can prescribe medicine.
I can prescribe all the same medications. I can order many of the same imaging studies. Of course, I have good relationships with local providers who are specialists. So if you need to see a gastroenterologist or a cardiologist, I have a good network of people, and I refer to those people when things are beyond what my education or clinical experience, can handle. Mm-hmm. So
we had talked earlier about the prescription, being prescribed drugs, and
Yes.
a little bit about dependency and
yes.
Versus addiction. So can you talk a little bit about
yes.
that?
Dependency and addiction. I have a lot of patients who come in and they say, Chris, I don't want to get addicted to this medication. And I say, yes, I don't want anybody to get addicted to medication. But there's a difference between dependency and addiction. And I'm fascinated that a lot of people don't know this. And maybe it's just because, I know I've been doing this a while, but, dependency is when you take a medication for a certain period of time and your body expects it. So when you stop it, you go through a physical change. Something doesn't feel right. Maybe you're more irritable. Maybe you become nauseous. Maybe you start sweating a little more.
So like a painkiller?
Yeah, well, a lot of medications do that. Painkillers, some anxiety medications. And that's a normal response. When people go through that, what we say withdrawal, that's a normal response that anybody would go through. It doesn't mean you're a drug addict. It doesn't mean you have an addiction problem.
That even happens with food, actually, too. Wouldn't you say? Like if you eat something every day and then your body would be like craving it because you don't have it.
I guess maybe, but I don't think to the degree that the medications do. Because to the degree that medications do, people will they could hallucinate. They could not sleep for a week. I mean, with some of those medications, you could even have seizures.
All the small print, right?
Yes.
All the stuff they say really fast in the drug commercial.
Yes, and a lot of things that, maybe in the past, we haven't paid much attention to those things. But with the recent heroin epidemic and the opioid crisis, we have to figure out what's going on and why is it going on. Which brings me to that second part, which is addiction. Now, addiction is sort of a psychological problem, a psychiatric problem where you could do something once, right? So a guy tries heroin once, and he loves it so much, it just flicks the switch for him. It fixes everything about him that he needs it, and he can't stop thinking about it. Now, he's not dependent yet because he only did it once, right? Maybe twice or three times. So he's probably not really dependent on it yet, but it did it. In the same way people who become alcoholics, which I think is one of the hardest things to treat is alcoholism. When I worked in the intensive care unit, I did a lot of alcohol detox. So patients would come in and they would be acutely withdrawing, meaning they probably ran out of money or stopped drinking or had surgery and didn't tell the surgeon that they had drank every day for the last, however many months or years. And then they would have this really high blood pressure, increased heart rate, confusion, and they'd end up in the intensive care unit on medication. Sometimes they'd even stay there for a week, 2 weeks. They might have a seizure. So it's a very serious problem. But yeah, dependency and addiction, two totally different things. You could become dependent on a medication. It doesn't matter who you are. That's a chemical thing, physiological thing. Addiction is more of a psychological thing. And we have to get to the root of that addiction part, which is, what was it? What was it about that one drink or that one drug or the cheeseburgers or whatever it may be? Gambling.
Cheese. Mine is cheese.
Gambling's a big one.
Yeah, gambling is amazing. It's the same idea with a rush.
Yeah, something about that dopamine, that feeling that you get. We have to get to the root of that.
So when you're saying the addiction, what I'm seeing is the denial, right? So you've got dependency, and you would probably admit to the doctor, you'd say, well, I've been taking these drugs here. But for addiction, the denial is what
Yes.
keeps you from moving forward or saying, yes, in fact, I drink every day, or I have a
Well, that's probably actually a
dependency.
really good point, because I think when you're dependent upon something, you may not even know that's why you feel as crummy as you feel.
Right.
When you're addicted, you may actually feel guilty about feeling the way you feel because you know it's wrong. Maybe, you know.
So you actually treat addiction at the practice.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to see anybody suffer, and I think if it requires me to take a more proactive approach and to embrace those people and help them, then I'm willing to do that. I mean, you know, I use a multidisciplinary team, meaning I have a medical director who's a medical doctor who specializes in addiction. I have a network of psychologists and psychiatrists who I could refer out to for sort of behavioral therapy. And then I also, you know, I'm developing, you know, how can I say this, like a more proactive approach to get people engaged in their own health. So like going to the gym, maybe yoga, reading. I believe very strongly in reading, like learning more about yourself.
So
You know?
actual reading, like with paper?
Yes, books. I have a list of books that I think people should read.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
So you're prescribing books?
Yes.
I love it.
Yes, not because it's like a hipster thing either. I mean, it sounds like sort of something like very easy for me to say, hey, here, read this book. But I find a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
You know, I really do. Because if you don't understand something, how could you expect to fix it? You know, things like codependency. What's codependency? I mean, if you don't know what it is, you don't know it exists. You could have that behavior, and you'll never even know that it could be sort of a toxic thing, right?
Right,
Trying to
because
find
the
happiness.
anxiety and trying to find happiness.
Trying to
and,
find happiness in something else outside of yourself. You know, and some people have taken that whole like perspective and ran with it, and I think have given it maybe like have gone too far with it.
Yeah.
So people look at it and they're like, well, you know, that sounds a little too much for me.
They call it woo-woo now,
Oh, really?
which is really
Okay.
just introspection, I think. A lot of it
yeah. Well,
could just be psychological, biological.
there's many components, you know, but when I look at people and I say, well, how do I take care of a person? Well, I think about, you know, your mind, your body, maybe like sort of your soul in a way, because if you believe in sort of a spiritual side of life, which to me just means like you give up control. You're like, you know what, like I can control a few things, all the other stuff is outside of my control. I don't know who takes care of it. Maybe it's a guy up there, maybe it's a goat, maybe it's a tree, I don't know.
A goat.
I don't know. We pray
That
to
sounds
what
like
you
a
want.
good religion.
But I think you have to surrender some of the control that you have.
Yeah.
You know, because we only have today, right? I mean, you just, it's really difficult. And people are struggling, you know.
Yeah.
People are out there and they're struggling. They're trying to find something, you know, and it might be a drink, it might be a drug. They might think by voting for a certain person. They may think there's a lot of things you could turn to. But a lot of it starts from inside. It really does. It sounds a little corny, but it really is. I believe in it.
Well, it sounds like you're taking a holistic approach
Yes.
to applying medicine. So you have several different applications. So you can prescribe regular drugs.
Yep.
You can refer people to experts or
Yes.
to specialists, and but you also are taking a look at the person themselves and getting to know who they are, because some of these elements might be simpler than they think. Like anxiety, you're
Absolutely.
saying that anxiety could be relieved by letting go of trying to control everything in your day.
Well, let's just talk about anxiety for a minute. So if we talk about anxiety, I mean, one of the biggest fears I have is being in front of a camera.
Yes, we
It is
did
the
it.
biggest fear. I'm telling you, my hands
Can't
are
even
freezing.
tell.
My heart is racing. I feel very out of place right now. But
But you look marvelous.
hey, listen, you know.
Kimberly,
so-
he looks marvelous.
So the thing is it's normal though. That's a normal feeling. You know, that fight or flight, the adrenaline, that what I'm feeling right now is a normal feeling. I'm anxious, you know. Why is that? Well, because I'm afraid. I'm afraid. This is a fear I have, and I have to work through it, and I have to find a way to work through it. I try to look at like the simpler things. If we could fix some of the more simple things, you might not need medication. But I prescribe a lot of medication, blood pressure, diabetes, asthmatics, even anxiety, depression, a lot of things. So it's not that I don't want to prescribe medicine. It's that I don't think people really want to take it. Because a lot of times when I do say, all right, well, let's try this medication, they say, I'd rather not. I say, okay, well, then you'd have to do this. You'd have to go to the gym. We'd have to get your BMI down to this level here, and I want you to come in. We're going to recheck this, and we'll see.
And read this book.
Yeah, and maybe read a book.
Right.
Maybe read a book.
The discipline that comes from that, from just a simple idea of doing something good for yourself every day, does not seem like a human attribute. It doesn't seem like something we're able to do.
Yes, I struggle with it myself. I mean, I'll be honest. A lot of things I tell people to do, when I'm saying for them to do them, I'm like, all right, now, don't do it. Don't be the person who do as I say, not as I do. So I do it. I mean, I really do. I read. I don't go to the gym as much as I would like to, but I'm very busy. So, but yeah, it's not a human attribute. I think people, quite often, they sacrifice themselves.
Right.
We work a lot. We're living in a very busy age, especially with the phone. I mean, you're always connected.
Right, but that is actually an advantage for you, if you want to move on to that, that you have people are plugging in to their own health through your practice. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what I do is I'm very technology driven. I love technology.
So I can see that because it's another new thing. So more research is always coming, just like the same idea.
So for me, it's never like, I grew up with technology. So Nintendo, Game Boys, building remote control cars, all kinds of stuff, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it gives us this sort of unique opportunity to get people more engaged in their own health. Because you could wear something like, a Fitbit, right, which tracks your steps and things like that, and it could synchronize with your phone, and it could go right into my computer system, my electronic health record, and I could see that stuff, just like your weight, your blood sugar, your blood pressure.
Nice.
So gone are the days I say, hey, listen, Joe, take this thing home, write down your blood pressure every day, and bring it in. And 9 times out of 10, the guy doesn't bring it in, and I say, and what that does is that gives me valuable data. So I could say, the only time your blood pressure is high is when you come in, and you always tell me that. And I could tell by looking at the computer here, you're right. You're right. Because every day
your blood pressure is high is when you go on television.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you my heart rate's probably. I mean, look at this. So technology is a big part of what I do.
And do you feel that people maybe could get into the habit of doing that because it is on the phone, or because it is something that's almost
that is like a working thesis of mine. I don't know.
Okay.
I think we're too early a little bit. I think it's a little too early for that, but I anticipate that that'll be the future. I anticipate that will become the norm at some point, and I want to be the guy who's there first. Not just because I want to say that, but because I want my patients to be those patients who are there first. And I think there's some value there, because if you can look at your phone and you could say, I need an appointment today. Boom. You log into the app. Chris is in the office. He's got availabilities at 1 and 3. Click the 3 o'clock, confirm it. That's it. You didn't even need to call my office.
Nice.
Or, I need to know what that medicine is called. Let me log into the app. Here's all my medications. Oh, so it's this medicine. That's what he put me on. So it's just those sort of things, those sort of little conveniences that technology brings us.
That's great. So now you also have some other specialized treatments. So you do certain testing for CDL, is that right?
Yes. So people who have commercial driver's license, anybody who has a commercial driver's license, they need a DOT exam, we call it, which is Department of Transportation. It's a special physical exam where there's certain rules, certain guidelines that people have to meet in order to have that license. And I perform those exams. So my patients who happen to be commercial, have a CDL license, we could do that at their physical exam. Or let's say you own a business and you have 20 truck drivers, and you have a really hard time with getting them all certified. They just forget to do it, or whatever the case may be. I can actually come to your work, place and do the exams there, or we could book special days where you come in on a weekend and I do all the employees. So occupational health services to some degree. Now my goal for that would really be to take care of those people.
Right.
And just do it at their regular annual physical exam. But a lot of physicians now, they're not taking that course to do those physical exams. So you may see Dr. Joe, and you've been seeing him for 20 years, and you go get your annual physical exam. But he doesn't have a license to do the CDL DOT exam.
Oh, Dr. Joe.
Oh, Dr. Joe, what's going on? Well, it's not worth it for Dr. Joe. He's ready to retire in a few years. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to take the online course and then show up to a testing facility. I get it. I'm sure I'll be judged, at some point. But, I offer a solution to that, which is I'm certified to do it.
So, and you also prescribe medical marijuana, is that right?
Well, the medical marijuana thing is it's a newer, in Connecticut, there's a lot of regulations that have just changed recently. In July, I believe, was when they actually passed the bill. But those rules won't take place, I think, till 2017. So I have to wait and see what happens with that. Right now, as it stands, medical doctors can prescribe medical marijuana for their patients. So my medical director, Dr. Curtis, he practices with us in our office. And if anybody fits the criteria, then I'll refer them to him.
Like there's a list on your website of
yes.
diseases that are treated or certain conditions that are
Yes.
treated with medical marijuana. It's this huge
It's a big
list, but
and
it's
an
also
ongoing list.
it doesn't look like a list that you could cheat on.
Well, that list is actually created by the medical board for the state of Connecticut. They have a special designated committee with medical doctors who actually approve which diagnoses make that list. And that list is growing by the day, So there are certain conditions I think, medical marijuana may be a healthier alternative than, let's say, some of those medications you could get dependent on, right?
Right. Now, is there other natural products like that? I mean, isn't aspirin from nature or whatever?
Well, I mean, come on. You look at all medications. I mean, pretty much every medication comes from something that was indigenous to like our environment or a part of an animal or something, and we play around with those molecules and we make synthetic versions, and that's what we try to do. We're playing around with things. Scientists are always creating new molecules and longer acting ones, and I mean, red rice yeast was one, I think. People were taking that a lot. It's like the derivative. It's where they get the statins from, like simvastatin, atorvastatin.
So like those Latin endings is because of where they're from? Is that how that works with sources?
I don't know. That's outside of my specialty at this point. I got to go back to school, I guess. I don't know.
Well, Chris, it has been absolutely wonderful talking to you, and I know that we can talk for even longer, but the show is almost over.
Really?
Yes.
That's it?
It is. I know. You made it through.
I was just warming up.
That's what I thought. So
my hands are getting warm again.
You're feeling a little better. So if there's any health advice that you can give your future patients out there, what would it be?
I would say this, that primary care or going to the doctor's office doesn't need to be an unpleasurable experience. That it can be pleasurable, you can look forward to it, and we could work together to sort of set goals to make people get healthier. And it's really quite simple. The problems are really when we talk about the insurance companies and all these other things.
Right.
But I have really good solutions that are very affordable. And I'm credentialed with pretty much all the insurance companies. So I'm just here to help. I'm here to help people. I'm here to help people feel better and sort of achieve that wellness that they want to achieve.
That's great. So thank you so much for being on the show. Mystic Medical Associates, look him up and visit him and let him become your healer. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.